So welcome to the 145 Cyber War and Peace talk, today given by Chris Sumner. Chris started his career back in the dark ages of 1999 doing security management for a Fortune 100 company. Moved from there. Chris began to work personally on data visualization, and as you'll soon hear, actually has an interesting story about Tony Hawk, so I thought that was pretty cool. Today he'll be talking about using data visualization tools in social networks. So please join me in welcoming Chris Sumner.
All right. Thanks very much. Can everyone hear me all right? Just want to make sure before I get started, because I'm using this mic thing here that lets me walk around. All right, we're good. All right, so thanks for the introduction. I'm Chris Sumner. I started my career a little longer ago than 1999, but got into security full-time around then. So first of all, thanks for coming today. There's another talk about ATMs, and so I'm pretty stoked that we've got such a big audience, actually. Thanks very much. So my talk today is on social networking and data visualization and extending data visualization tools to enumerate social networks maybe a little bit quicker than by hand or in a non-visual way. Before I start, I've got a disclaimer that I need to share. I'm speaking for myself, not as part of my company, so if anybody knows who I work for, then it's important that at least let you know that this is, on behalf of me, doesn't reflect the opinions of the organisation for which I work. So what are you in for today? First of all, we're going to start with a brief introduction to social network analysis and a brief intro to visualization, about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll go pretty quick. There's a white paper with a lot of the science behind it available. Then going to take a look at a case study with Twitter and a tool called Maltego, and then finally we'll wrap up with a case study that's a little bit darker involving Nigerian 419 crime versus Maltego. So the goals of the talk today really, I guess firstly it's to share what I've been doing at a high level and give you some appreciation of the possibilities of data visualization in this kind of field. So hoping that some of you will go, oh, that's pretty neat. I can apply this in slightly different contexts, and maybe encourages folks to go and explore a lot of the data that's out there, so that you can apply it either in a work situation or for analyzing networks yourself. So who's the talk aimed at? I just want to be clear on this in case people are coming who have already got a significant level of data visualization knowledge or a significant level of social networking data mining knowledge. So really, if you fit into this category, you should be in for a good time. I can't promise that, but see me afterwards if it wasn't. If you fit into the next category here, where you're either really experienced, or you've had some good experience with data visualization or with social networking analysis, then you may get some crossover and see how you can use different techniques in kind of different way. And if you fit into the latter category, you probably get what I'm talking about already, but there may still be something in it for you. So that's really what who the talk's aimed at. So briefly, who am I? I'm Chris Sumner, but I signed up to Twitter last summer, and like a lot of people who sign up to Twitter, the name that you want has already been taken by somebody else. So I ended up choosing the Sugmeister because my nickname at school and forever since has been Suggy. And it's one of those things that I sort of kind of regret now, and never mind. So by day, I work in corporate security. Actually do program management around security development lifecycle, and outside of work, I'm interested in data analysis, not usually social networks, but looking at large data sets. visualizing that to help me understand a little bit more about the data at a high level before drilling down. And since last year, really got into social media in a pretty big way, and also a DEF CON chapter called DC 4420 in London. A quick note, if if you've not been to a local DEF CON chapter, really worth going. It's like bite-sized bits of DEF CON throughout the year, so you don't get that post-DEF CON depression thing going on. If you get that like I do. And a strange sequence of events led me to appearing here, so you'll obviously see why shortly. Okay, the introduction piece, social network analysis, a target-rich environment is either a problem or an opportunity, depending on which side of the table you're looking at it from. Social network analysis has been around really since the Greeks, but this guy here, Jacob Marino, was pretty widely credited of being sort of the originator of this diagram, which you'll be pretty familiar with by the end of the talk, this kind of thing. So that was published first in the New York Times in 1933, and really he sort of led the field in understanding the dynamics of social networks. So a little bit more about that in the white paper. And then a target-rich environment. This was something that I kind of figured would be the case, but had never actually looked into until I decided to submit a paper for the talk. I read a report that was out this year or late last year by Cisco stating that there was something like 21 exabytes of data flowing around the world per month. And the amount of data that's available now, that's sort of personal information, photographs and stuff, is just like exploding. So you're getting more and more data out there from more and more people, which is pretty interesting if you like exploring data. I should probably get out more, but so Facebook recently, actually, if you look at the white paper, it says 350 million users, and then before I got here, it said it's hitting 500-ish million users. Of course, some people may have more than one account, although that's sort of forbidden, but such is life. Then there's something else interesting. There's a bunch of studies that have been going on. Stanford have done quite a lot on this, looking at what people say and actually what people do. So I kind of termed this the privacy paradox, and it's where the students interviewed mostly said, yeah, I take privacy very seriously, yet when they analysed the behaviour of these students on social networks like Facebook, they did the opposite of what they said they'd want to do. So, for example, 89% used their real name. 61% have an identifiable photo online, and so on. I mean, recently, a lot of the privacy concerns around Facebook. A lot of people are still what I'd term promiscuous. They'll be friends with anyone. They'll post anything up there. I mean, it's a data miner's dream, actually, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because there's some seriously cool stuff going on in this space. And then finally, so my personal favorite really, there's a great paper. It's a pretty big paper by a guy called Daniel Solov, and called I've Got Nothing to Hide and Other Misunderstandings of Privacy. And that kind of goes along with the whole privacy paradox of people putting more and more stuff out there. So we've got social network analysis, and now we've got a target-rich environment. So previously, when the Greeks were looking at this sort of stuff, it was all by hand, and now obviously you've got a great stack of data available that you can explore very, very quickly, as we'll see a little bit later. So what's the problem? Well, your searches, your online activity isn't all that anonymous, essentially, and that's probably not a great surprise to anyone in the room. But there was the case of this lady, Thelma Arnold. I won't read the AOL number, but in a roughly 2006, AOL published a bunch of their sort of search strings, and I think it was the New York Times. They must be into social analysis. they'd actually gone taking a look at the data for this AOL user 4417, what have you, and they determined that it was this lady in Georgia, this Thelma Arnold, because of the searches that she was looking at, because she was looking at dog kennels and stuff like that. For you can see she's got a dog. So all of this stuff that's out there, this I've got nothing to hide, what could possibly go wrong, isn't all that anonymous. Even if the data is anonymized and your real name's taken out, it's still highly possible for people to link that back to an individual. So we've got a lot of data, and you've got a lot of noise. Really the opportunity here is how do you find the interesting stuff just a little bit quicker, and you can do that, as I hope to show today quickly, is by data mining, techniques like screen scraping. I don't know if anyone saw the Michael Schrenk talk at DEF CON last year. If you didn't, go onto the archives and have a look at that, because that's an absolutely fantastic talk around obtaining data through screen scraping. Obviously you've got to be aware of the robots.txt and what have you. Named entity recognition and data visualization. I'll talk just briefly about those two right now. So named entity recognition is really parsing data to extract and classify information. It differs from sort of meta-analysis because it classifies the data and not one particular type. Very similar, but slight different. So here's an example. Greg bought 300,000 shares of Legat, completely random idea here, in 2010, and this is what it ends up looking like. This is kind of the example was pretty much from Wikipedia, but now what you can see here is that you've almost got sort of an XML format where it's picked out the name, a quantity, an organization, and a date. So at very high level, that's what it's like. Have a Google around for named entity recognition. You'll see a lot of stuff from the University of Stanford and the University of Illinois, and there's some online tools, Open Calais, for example, that's got an API, so you can pass data to that and and use it. So we'll see a little bit more about the power of what you can do here. Data visualization. Quick show of hands, anybody read this book or familiar with a piece of software called processing? Like a couple of people maybe. Processing, I mean, first of all, this book is fantastic. Ben Fry really has done a great job and outlines a process for data visualization, acquiring data, parsing it, filtering it, essentially getting your data into a neat, filtered form, and then rendering it, and then allowing you to interact with that model. So almost a three-step process. Get the data, tidy it up, output it to some sort of file or XML, CSV, whatever, and then render it. So iterative. And he talks about that in this book and uses the processing software, which you can download, have a play with. It really is fantastic. But it's this last point really that I wanted to home in on, which is where you see a big gap in a number of tools out there, is interacting with the data. So the whole process of generating a data set and then interacting with the data and doing that in a sort of a loop means that you have to leave the graphical user interface, whereas what I'm going to talk about today shows you a tool where you don't necessarily leave the GUI. So for tools, there's a number of them. I just put a few on here. You could go on. There's a great website out there called secviz.org. It's got a whole bunch of tools on there. I picked a few that I liked and I played around with, but going to focus on Maltego. So the first question really is, well, what is Maltego? So I'm going to go through this bit pretty quickly because I'm going to talk about it and you'll get the idea through the rest of the talk. But briefly, it's a tool for information gathering and visualizing information in a graphical way. There's infrastructure components, and I'll show a quick example of that. So you can look at DNS records, IP addresses, URLs, mail records, what have you. And there's a human part where you can look for mentions of people, telephone numbers, and you know, what have you, and link all of those sorts of relationships together. I'll show you more about that, but this is just a quick snapshot. But